Absolutely. Thanks for joining me, or thanks for letting me join you, rather.
Yeah. So I'll just introduce you. We'll go into questions.
Okay, sounds great. Hold on, let me.
I'm here with Aria DiMezzo, the first transgender person to win the GOP's nomination for sheriff in Cheshire County. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's Cheshire County, by the way. I've always called it Cheshire too. Well, before I moved here, and then every shire here is pronounced differently. I mean, you have Worcester, you have all kinds of nonsense. So who knows how to pronounce any of this? But yeah, here in Cheshire County, we call it Cheshire.
Cheshire. Okay, Cheshire County. You're not the average sheriff candidate. You describe yourself as a transsexual Satanist anarchist.
Yep.
And is running on the slogan, fuck the police.
That's correct. I definitely stand out from your average sheriff candidate, not just because of those labels, but just because of who I am and my platform, my unwillingness to enforce laws that don't actually involve victims.
Yeah, and I like, that makes a lot of sense. I was reading your website and some of your stances about victimless crimes, because you favor ending, prosecution of drug crimes, sex work, illegal immigration. And that sounds very rational.
I would think so. And I think it's important because so many of the murders of American citizens by police are initiated over some sort of victimless crime nonsense, like Eric Garner, who was selling cigarettes out on the streets of New York City. He died for that. There ultimately isn't a law that the police won't kill someone to enforce. And we have all of these laws on the books where no one is actually being hurt. They're just illegal. The government doesn't want them to do it. And people are dying as the police are going out there and enforcing those laws. So let's stop enforcing those laws.
And I saw because a lot of that's about, raising revenue for the state. And, why aren't more politicians though, bringing that issue up? Because you're I think one of the first people and stuff, everything I've heard that. I know you belong to a libertarian group. You hear some libertarians speak about that sometimes, but you don't really hear a lot of elected officials talking about that. And that seems like a way to be able to stop these unnecessary murders.
I wish more politicians did, but Democrats, Republicans, and even a lot of libertarians, they're all part of the state apparatus. They want the state to have money because they all have these great visions of what they can do with all of that money. If only they had it, then they could do this great thing, that great thing. But ultimately, it all just feeds into this Leviathan war machine that is killing people abroad and domestically. And go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. What made you want to run for sheriff in the first place, though?
Well, it was 2018 initially when I ran as a libertarian. We wanted to get everyone into a position on the ballot because we actually had our own ballot. We wanted to make sure we found a candidate for every office. Well, myself being pretty well versed in self-defense and the art of diplomacy and de-escalating situations, I was the best one of the group to run for sheriff. And in 2020, I was going to run for state representative as a Republican, but the Republicans weren't happy about that. So they got I think she's the vice chair of the party now. I don't know. I could look into it because it's the third or fourth time in an interview that I've said, I think she's the vice chair. I don't care what she is. They got a prominent figure in the Cheshire County Republican Committee to run for the same position, so that I was going to have to do an actual primary against her, which I would have ultimately just lost. So I looked online, and the Republican who normally files for sheriff in Cheshire County, Earl Nelson, had not done so as of that Wednesday, and the filing deadline was Friday. So the next day, Ian Freeman and I, we went to Concord. I filed for the Republican sheriff nomination, and no one else ever did. So ultimately, it was the Republicans who caused this repeatedly. And that's true of the Democrats as well. It's the entire political apparatus that caused me to become the Republican Cheshire County nominee, instead of just letting me run as a libertarian and being forgotten.
Right, because there's people usually when you go to the ballot, there's names that you don't recognize, and people usually just vote along their party. So
sadly, the pictures of my ballot, they're available online. You can tell I voted for people that I personally know, that I knew something about. If I didn't know them, I didn't vote for them. If I didn't know anything about them, I didn't vote for them. As a result, out of the 25 to 30 possibilities that there were on the ballot, I filled in 5 circles. And one of those was me. But you have all of these other people who go in there and they just fill in the circle by all of these people knowing nothing about them. And this is how we end up with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, these two senile old white dudes who are psychopaths.
You're also a high priestess of the Reformed Satanic Church.
That's correct.
Yo, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I'm not I like what the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan have done legally as far as pushing back against the Puritanism and the Christianity that pervades the United States. However, then you have things like the Church of Satan that fought in the Supreme Court for tax-exempt status. And instead of accepting that, they say, no, we're going to proudly pay our taxes as all churches should. But those taxes they're being used to round up, immigrants and put them in effectively concentration camps. They're being used to build bombs and drop bombs on people around the world. How could anyone proudly pay into that war machine? So the Reformed Satanic Church refuses to condone war. And so we refuse to pay taxes. That's probably the biggest distinction.
Wow. So, you have your own internet radio show. I guess you call yourself the She-Male. What type of topics do you discuss on your radio show?
Well, the news media keeps calling it an internet show. It is available on the internet, but it's actually a terrestrial radio show. We're on close to 200 radio stations throughout the United States. So it's a radio show that also has an internet version. Right. But it's a call-in show. Anyone can call in and talk about anything they want. It's called Free Talk Live. I don't really call myself the She-Male or anything like that anymore. That was something I did several years ago, and I just sort of let it lapse and just stopped calling myself that. Not for any particular reason. It just no longer felt right for me to do it. Not like morally right or anything. It just no longer really vibed with me. But I don't mind being called that because I did call myself that for years. But on the show, we talk about what's happening in the world from a libertarian perspective, and people can call in and talk about those issues, or they can talk about whatever they want.
How do you feel, because you bring up the media, like you've been depicted in the media, do you feel like there's been like a fair, representation of yourself?
I have not read everything that the media has written about me. So far, everything I've seen has been 100% fair, and a lot of it came directly from me. I use the Telegram chat app, and I have a support group for the campaign. And when I posted the Snopes article, because Snopes did an interview on me and they wrote up an article, one of the guys commented, almost everything in this article is false. I went, well, I don't think you know me very well, because everything they got in this article, they got directly from me, and it's 100% true. So, and they've all been that way. The Boston Globe, when they interviewed me, they were 100% fair. The article was great. It's probably one of my favorite articles about me.
Okay.
I imagine Fox News was who initially, it's Fox News' fault that this whole thing blew up like it did. But I imagine that their article isn't very kind to me, and I imagine the comments there are not very kind to me. But overwhelmingly, people have been fair, and they've been, positive.
But everybody wasn't happy though, like as far as like with your because your car was vandalized.
It was.
Do you think that was a direct result of you winning the nomination?
I don't know. The timing is coincidental. It happened the night that Fox News ran my story and my phone started blowing. It happened the night that all of this blew up and went viral. I don't know if it's just some homophobic or transphobic person who has been seeing me for a while and wanting to do something, and finally they were just drunk enough to do it, or their buddies encouraged them to do it, or if it was because, I won the nomination and they had just found out about it and they were angry. I don't know. I don't know if it was a result of it or not, because the time it was like immediately after this went viral, it happened. I wouldn't expect it to really be a result of that. But the news was locally known prior to that. So, who knows?
How tolerant though is New Hampshire? Because you talked about being trained in self-defense. Is that a result of because you're transgender and stuff, you feel the need to protect yourself?
No, I'm actually not from here. I'm from Mississippi, and the tolerance level in Mississippi it doesn't exist, right? So being able to defend yourself there, it's very important.
What part of Mississippi are you from?
The South Haven area, the Northwest, sort of about 10, 15 minutes south of Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, yeah, I've been there. So I was stationed in Greenville, Mississippi.
Oh, I've got family who lives in Greenville.
Yeah, the Delta. Not the greatest place and stuff and everything. Not a whole lot to do. I like it towards this way a lot more. You know, a big topic among conservatives is like, you know, should kids learn about transgender issues in schools? I wanted to ask you about that, you know, to get your perspective.
Well, kids learn about boys and girls in school. I don't see why it should be different for them to learn about transgender issues, you know. They learn very early that boys are boys and girls are girls, and this sticks in Republicans' heads. I mean, a Republican or a conservative's understanding of biology and sexuality is basically what they learned in kindergarten. That boys have this and girls have that, and that's the end of it. I think it probably would have been good. We wouldn't have the political environment we have today if this was openly discussed in childhood, because what we see conservatives talking now are the same lines they learned about gender and sexuality from their childhoods. And I understand that when you have a child mentality, a child's level of understanding regarding this subject, you think, oh, well, this is way too complicated for kids to see, for kids to understand. But their level of comprehension on this subject is identical to that of a child's, and they're not getting it. Well, let's teach it to the child while their mind is still open, so that they're not a 50-year-old man going, well, boys have this and that's it. That's all there is to it. So I'm in support of parents exposing their children to whatever cultural phenomena they think the children should be exposed to. And I wish more people would agree that it's fine for children to be exposed to trans issues. It's fine for children to be exposed to race issues. It's not damaging their childhood. It's not harming them. It's not traumatizing them. It's enlightening them. It's saying, hey, this is a thing that happens in the world that you live in, and you need to understand the nuances of it. You need to understand how to live in this world that you actually live in.
Do you feel like there's a number of adults, like, you know, particularly conservatives, that are ignorant about, like, you know, these topics? Because I imagine, like, you know, reading some of the comments online, that, you know, the typical user on Fox News, they probably don't really even know, like, you know, like a transgender person.
They probably don't. And if they do, it's that Blair White chick, and not anyone who actually, you know, is a fan of trans people. Yeah, I mean, they're just stuck in that old world view, the one that has never actually existed, that they want to live in that Leave It to Beaver style world that was never real in the first place. And they built up this mythology in their heads that convinced themselves that everything that isn't, you know, straight cis white male is a threat to the world that they want and to restore, that never actually existed.
What are your thoughts on Blair White? Because she's, you know, a Trump supporter, you know,
Sure.
conservative, but she's also transgender.
I don't know a whole lot about her. I'm not a fan of her. I don't go out of my way to watch her videos. I don't think I've ever seen anything that she actually said. I just know from trans people who I support and trans people who I'm friends with who have followed her work, they're not fans of her. They don't have anything nice to say about her. But as for me, I don't know anything about her.
What are their thoughts about the Trump administration, as far as, like, with because I hear a lot of, like, you know, LGBTQ people saying that if you support LGBTQ people, that you shouldn't be voting for Trump at all. Like, you know, is that, like, your assessment? Or, you know, because I see that you're not necessarily a fan of Trump or Biden, but, you know, like, I just wanted to know, like, your thoughts about particularly.
Well, an LGBT supporter honestly shouldn't vote for Trump or Biden. Neither one of them are good for LGBT people. Trump has done some really good things for trans people, like not allowing trans people to serve in the military. Hey, that's great. Now let's not let anyone else serve in the military, but this is the first step toward that. Okay, we can't let trans people in. Okay, now no gay people in the military. Okay, now no straight people in the military. Done. Call it a day. Everyone go home. So, I mean, good on Trump for that. You know, I don't want people serving in the military. So if he bans someone from serving in the military, I don't have an issue with that. I think that's a positive development. But that's all that can be said about him, right? Is that he did this one thing.
Well, but I imagine, like, obviously there's transgender people that want to be in the military. So, like, I mean, from
why would they want to murder people? Why would they want to be murderers for hire? Is my question to them.
There's a lot of jobs and stuff in the military where it's like you're not necessarily murdering people. Like, I was in the Coast Guard. I didn't murder people. Like, we don't murder people, you know. You, like, mostly, like, I worked on a river, you know, we did, like, aids to navigation and stuff, everything, plane buoys. There's a lot of, like, different jobs in the military. I think you know, that's kind of like there obviously are people and stuff who do murder people, you know. I mean, that's an
Sure.
aspect of it, but like, you know, I don't think everybody in the military is a murderer, you know.
Well, I view the state as sort of a monolithic entity. It's sort of the Hindu goddess with 10,000 arms. You know, it's all connected. It's all together. A person who served in the Coast Guard or, you know, at a Air Force base in Nevada who hasn't actually, you know, dropped any bombs on anyone isn't actually literally a murderer. No, the state is a murderer, and they are feeding into the monolithic structure that causes that murder, but they're not actually, you know, contributing to it directly. But I mean, so are people who pay taxes, so are people who pay sales taxes, so are people who just do anything and everything to support the state, no matter how little it is. Even just paying that sales tax on that candy bar, it's feeding into the Leviathan war machine.
Yeah,
and this is why I want people to not pay their taxes.
No, I totally get where you're coming from with that. So you're running against Eli Rivera. Like, you know, do you feel like you, I mean, and stuff, everything, you can actually win this election, you know?
I don't know what's going to come. It's interesting. Republicans seem to be supporting Eli Rivera, but there also is this group of hardcore Republicans who will never vote for Rivera, and they'll never vote for me. So they're going to probably write in Earl Nelson, the person who didn't run this year. I expect to pull a lot of Democrats to vote for me, and I expect to lose a lot of Republicans who vote for Rivera. But then again, there are also a lot of Democrats who just vote straight ticket. There are a lot of Republicans who just vote straight ticket. And there are a lot of Republicans here in Cheshire County, to go back to answer the question about tolerance, who genuinely don't care that I'm trans or that I'm an anarchist or that I'm a Satanist. They just want the government to leave them the hell alone. And I'm the one who advocates that. So it's quite possible that there are a lot of Republicans here in Cheshire County who will vote for me fully knowing who and what I am and what I stand for. Simply because, you know, I do represent getting the boot of the state off of our necks.
Yeah, and I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I agree with you on a number of issues, and thank you, man, so much for taking the time. What's next for you in your career?
I don't know. Hopefully being the sheriff. Yeah, my cats, they love video bombing me. Hopefully being sheriff is next in my career. But if not, I will still be here in Keene doing the anarchist thing and pushing back against the state as much as humanly possible.
Okay. Where can people follow you on social media?
The best way to find all the links is to go to fpolice.com. That's EFFpolice.com. There's a link there to all of my, you know, my Twitter, my Mastodon, and my Facebook. I think there's Facebook on there, plus my Telegram chats and all of that. So that would be the best way. That's where it's all collected together.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.
Definitely.